Curious about what goes on behind the scenes before that ribeye lands on your plate? We spoke with a group of chefs and food specialists to uncover the behind-the-scenes techniques of steakhouse cooking, and what they shared was eye-opening. As countless diners have discovered, an evening at an upscale steakhouse can fill your belly while emptying your wallet.
They said market price. What market are you shopping at?
It's easy to assume that a pricey steak automatically means premium quality, but Chef Niederman points out that this is a common misconception. The cost often reflects the skill and care of the kitchen staff rather than the meat itself. Even more modest cuts can be elevated by a talented culinary team. That said, prime steaks do come with a hefty price for a reason. Only about 2 to 3% of a cow's cuts reach prime status, and only if the animal is young and well-nourished. Scarcity, combined with supply and demand dynamics, heavily influences the price, explains Chef Burroughs in an interview with Mashed. Lower supplies often translate to higher prices. For example, tenderloin or filet mignon are naturally rarer, since the cut comes from an animal with less meat. At the same time, customer demand drives up the cost of favored cuts such as ribeye and New York strip, prized for their rich flavor and tender texture. When choosing a steakhouse for your next night out, it's natural to look for the thickest, juiciest cuts cooked exactly how you like them. But there's another factor that matters just as much: where the beef comes from. Izzy Kirsch, an experienced hospitality consultant, explained, "Almost 20 years ago, meat purveyors were independent and every city had its own great steak provider. Today, most of those companies have been bought out and are owned by Cisco, US Foods, etc. Although locally sourced meat is often considered ideal, many chefs rely on wholesale distributors to supply their kitchens. That said, this tends to apply more to chain steakhouses. Independent restaurants frequently make a point of supporting smaller vendors. Take Chef Paul Niederman of Jupiter Grill in Florida, for example. He sources all his beef from northern Georgia and Iowa to guarantee only prime and certified Angus cuts make it to the table. Likewise, Chef Carlos Barros of Palermo, an Argentinian steakhouse in New York City, turns to long-established local butcher shops for his selection. Whether you're planning a lively family dinner or a more intimate meal with a close friend or partner, a steakhouse sets the perfect stage. That said, picking the right time to go can make all the difference, since lunch and dinner rushes often make tables scarce and the experience feel rushed. Luckily, even high-demand restaurants have quieter periods, usually early in the evening. Benjamin Pukai, founder and CEO of Benjamin Restaurant Group in Manhattan, which operates Benjamin Steakhouse, shared with Mashed, "Getting the best experience at a steakhouse is the same as other fine dining restaurants. We recommend coming in before 7 p.m. so you're in for the first seating and can stay as long as you'd like. Because most dinner crowds hit their peak between 7 and 9 p.m., arriving for an early dinner around 5:30 p.m. gives you a relaxed window to savor the ambiance while finishing your meal." Chef Burroughs pointed out an added advantage, noting, "A lot of restaurants offer early deals or happy hour specials. For most steakhouses, these quieter periods usually occur between 4 and 6 p.m. It's well known that industrial meat production takes a heavy toll on the environment, generating a huge carbon footprint and consuming vast resources. For steakhouses, which are deeply involved in sourcing and serving high-quality meat, sustainability becomes a key consideration. After all, steak doesn't magically appear on the plate. Chef Wise emphasizes that partnering with the right suppliers is crucial. His restaurants work with Snake River Farms in Idaho, which follows a sustainable farming model. In the kitchen, his staff also minimizes waste by creatively using every part of the product. As he explained to Mashed, "We use all our trimmings to make our signature burger, Philly cheesesteak, and harissa marinated beef skewers." Chefs Niederman and Burroughs prioritize sourcing meat locally, both to cut down on transportation emissions and to support nearby farms. According to a 2022 study in Nature Food, roughly 19% of global food system emissions come from food transport, highlighting the environmental benefits of choosing local and plant-based options. Another key strategy is steering clear of items in short supply. Chef Niederman noted, "If there's a massive shortage on something, or it's being overproduced, then I tend to steer clear of that item and go another route." Some of the best seafood available at restaurants can surprisingly be found at steakhouses, where classics like surf and turf are menu staples. Whether aiming to follow culinary trends or cater to pescatarian diners, these establishments offer seafood options that are often just as premium as their beef and come with a matching price. Unlike specialty seafood restaurants that feature extensive selections from the ocean, steakhouses typically focus on 5 or 6 crowd-pleasing items. To stay competitive, steakhouse chefs approach seafood sourcing with the same care as their meat. Chef Niederman explained that reputable vendors, constantly checking what product comes in, refusing inferior product, using what is in season for the highest quality, and knowing where the seafood is coming from is the way I manage it. To ensure their seafood sourcing stays sustainable, Chef Wise seeks out partners aligned with the Trust Restaurant Group's values. For Rare Society, he teamed up with an oyster farmer in Coos Bay, Oregon. The oysters are cultivated in a blend of freshwater and saltwater at the Columbia River's mouth, helping to support and restore the local ecosystem's biodiversity. Once you know where your steak comes from, the next factor to consider is its grade. The USDA ranks beef, with prime sitting at the top thanks to its rich marbling and flavor. However, just because a menu lists a cut as prime doesn't guarantee it truly meets that standard. Chef Niederman recommends asking questions about the steak's grade, since some restaurants may serve a lower quality cut than advertised. What's labeled as prime could in reality be choice, which has noticeably less marbling and tenderness.
Your menu clearly states that you serve USDA prime beef. True?
Yes, Hugo, we do serve USDA prime beef.
Wrong!
Naturally, choice beef can still be a solid pick if you're not shelling out extra for prime. Chef Brad Wise, who owns Trust Restaurant Group in San Diego as well as Rare Society Steakhouse, explains, "There's a narrative out there that prime is the only option, but it's really not in my eyes. Incorporating choice allows us to be a more approachable concept. Labeling issues aren't limited to beef grades either." Chef Burroughs points out, most common labeling, such as product of USA, could just mean it was finalized here, but doesn't provide much insight on where the animal was raised. Asking about the grade of your steak might feel like a small detail, but it can deepen your understanding of the meat and its flavor, ultimately enhancing your entire steakhouse experience. A top-notch steak depends on several elements. Yet one detail often missed by home cooks trying to mimic steakhouse flavors is proper seasoning. Chefs agree that a good cut only requires salt and pepper to enhance its taste, though many underestimate just how much salt is necessary.
The steak is under-seasoned, and there doesn't seem to be a grain of salt on the table.
Chef Burroughs points out that while some diners might grumble about the saltiness of a steak, that generous seasoning is essential for a steakhouse to make each cut truly shine. Chef Wise described his typical method. Steaks are brushed with an oil and herb mixture, heavily seasoned with salt and pepper, then finished with beef tallow and a sprinkle of sea salt before hitting the table. For those seeking an exceptional crust, dry rubs and marinades can elevate flavor even further. Creative and budget-friendly options for marinating at home include citrus juice, soy sauce, or even yogurt, giving your steak a rich, tender taste without the high-end price tag. There's a clear distinction between local steakhouses and larger chains like Longhorn or Ruth's Chris in terms of food, service, flavor, and overall vibe, though neither is inherently superior. Chefs Burroughs and Niederman note that independent spots often face higher stakes, pun intended, because they can't easily tap into a pool of trained staff during shortages, unlike chains that have more flexibility in hiring.
What kind of steak joint is this?
Look, dude. 2 days ago, I was working at a shoe store.
Additionally, big steakhouse chains benefit from greater purchasing power, allowing them to buy ingredients in bulk and lower their overall costs. As Chef Burroughs explained, large steakhouses are more standardized, which means they have their recipes, techniques, and pricing across all their locations. This bulk buying strategy helps chain steakhouses maintain a consistent flavor profile, so diners know what to expect no matter the location. On the other hand, independently owned steakhouses offer their own perks. Kirsch, who has consulted for several of these smaller operations, notes that they tend to be more agile when it comes to updating menus to match evolving tastes and trends. He explained, "Most chains have to go through a long process to make any substantive changes to the menu." One major reason home cooks struggle to get that restaurant-quality sear is temperature. Most residential gas grills max out around 500 to 550 degrees Fahrenheit. That's plenty for burgers, but far below what's needed for a true steakhouse crust. In contrast, professional kitchens rely on superheated searing grills and infrared broilers that can reach 1,500 to 1,600 degrees Fahrenheit. For even more precision, Some steakhouses create custom equipment to hit the perfect temperature. At Benjamin's, Prelvukai's team uses broilers built to reach 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit, delivering that coveted sear that's impossible to replicate at home. At Rare Society, Chef Wise takes a different approach. His team uses custom live fire grills fueled with wood. The wood isn't just for heat, it contributes essential flavor. As he explained, "We burn American red oak in particular, sourced from the Central Coast, which imparts a sweet and smoky flavor to the steak."
Well, this sure is a nice steak place.
And I like how there's so much dark wood in here.
Yeah, I saw that. I think that's real neat.
A dry aging cabinet is often the crown jewel of a steakhouse, usually one of the first things diners notice upon entering. Inside, various beef cuts hang in pristine display cases, but the real magic of dry aging happens in a carefully controlled room behind the scenes. Temperature, humidity, and airflow are constantly monitored, with the ideal range between 32 and 39.2 degrees Fahrenheit, allowing the beef to develop rich flavor without spoiling, according to Lazy T Ranch. Achieving this balance is tricky and requires a lot of trial and error, even for experienced chefs. Prelvukai noted, "When we first opened Benjamin Steakhouse, we had a lot of trial and error with our dry aging box. Since it's located in our restaurants, we built it ourselves to customize it and create the perfect steaks." He mentioned that perfecting the technique took nearly 20 years, since even minor mistakes could compromise the entire batch. Chef Wise points out that because dry aging is so labor-intensive and time-consuming, lasting anywhere from several weeks to a few months, the steaks carry a premium price. Dry aging in-house requires, in his words, time, labor, and product loss, as the meat can shrink by 15 to 30% of its original weight. Unsurprisingly, this makes the cuts pricier, but many diners agree the flavor is well worth it.